I do.
Have a seat right there.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Truman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tell us who you are, please, and what you do.
Chris Davis. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Access Health, and I'm also an of-counsel partner in the firm of Wooten Davis, Hustle & Johnson.
So by profession, what do you do?
I'm a lawyer by profession, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us your relationship between you and Michael Cochran?
Mike and I became friends around 2011, I believe. Lived in the same proximity. We shared the same interests, coaching. My youngest son was about the same age as his children, was right in between his children, and so we would always see each other, whether it be sporting events and things like that. And so through that, we became, he was one of my best friends because we would coach baseball together, take vacations, really hang out just a lot.
Were you also friends with the defendant?
Yes.
Was that on the same level, or would you describe that differently than your relationship with Michael Cochran?
I mean, it would be a different relationship because Natalie and Jennifer were closer friends, just as Mike and I were closer friends, and I would assume that would be the same. On the other side, Jennifer was closer to Natalie than she was with Mike. We would obviously do things together as a family, but Mike and I would do things separately, whether it be games, etc., and Jennifer and Natalie would do the same.
Prior to February 6th of 2019, do you recall the last time you saw Michael?
I would say the last time I saw him was within days of February 6th. I don't remember the specific last time, but it was within those few days.
How did he seem to you at that time?
He was Mike.
Did he seem sick?
No, he did not seem sick.
Could I have this marked as state 7?
No.
6?
Number 6.
Oh, number 2 in your hearts.
Is this 2 separate?
No, they're just separated from me. They're the one exhibit.
Okay.
We'll glue them together when I'm done. Thank you. Davis, on February 5th of 2019, did you and Michael Cochran exchange text messages?
I'm sure we did.
You're sure you did? Why?
Because we would probably text each other about every day.
Ugh. Is that showing up on your screen?
It is. It is now. Thank you.
Take a moment and review that, please.
Okay.
How do you know that that's a text from Michael's phone to your phone?
Well, I recall the conversation, but it also says Michael at the top, and it has the picture that was assigned to his number.
By your
that
phone?
makes sense. Yeah, by my phone. It was, and I recall the conversation.
We are so close, buddy. What does that mean?
He was very excited that he was finally going to get the money that he'd been waiting on from the federal government, and a lot of things had happened in between for the previous 2 months, maybe even 3 months. They had what had been told was they were going through an audit, and then at that point in time,
Objection. I'm going to object to what the federal government was going to do that calls for hearsay.
That's fine. We can just stop right there. Now, this is a text with you and somebody else. Who else is involved in this text chain?
It says Natalie Cochran on the text that I'm reading. But there's someone else on there as well. It looks like it says two people, and unfortunately I can't see the top of that. It probably would be.
Okay. There's a reference in here. If you could explain that to us. The Smith house? What's that about?
Yes, they.
Your Honor,
I was-
I'm going to object. This, so far, seems to be the financial case retried. What's the relevance of all of this?
I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to allow the state to proceed. The objection's overruled.
Tell us about the circumstances where this text came to pass.
So what had happened the year before in 2018, I don't know the exact dates of when they purchased or were attempting to purchase homes at Flat Top Lake, but Mike and Natalie were, because I was not a part of that transaction until the gist of what happened in the text, but they were purchasing homes at Flat Top Lake from the Smiths. I'm not sure both homes were from the Smiths. My understanding, they bought a home for themselves and a home for Natalie's parents. And they were purchasing homes at Flat Top Lake because of the issues with their company with not receiving their funds from the government. The government was shut down. There was an audit that was ongoing, is what I believed and was told. But because they weren't getting any money, what was happening?
To any testimony based on hearsay, Your Honor.
All right, well, he said that's what he believed, and I think that's good enough. And perhaps we can stray from what he was told, but he indicated what he believed, and I'm going to allow that. The objection's overruled.
For our purposes today, what was your involvement in the Smith house?
They were going to let the houses go back. It's not necessarily a repossession, but ultimately because the contract wasn't fulfilled and they weren't buying the homes, these pieces of real estate, they were going to let the Smiths take the homes back. And the idea was, what will it take for them just to take the homes back, because she didn't want the houses anymore.
And you helped with that?
Yes, Robert Dunlap represented the Smiths, and there was a resolution document that I believe he prepared. Not really for sure who prepared it, but there was a resolution document that ultimately got resolved. It didn't happen at that point in time. It happened later after Michael passed, but that's what that's referencing.
And you were part of the negotiating of that, or resolving it?
Resolving that, yes.
Okay. Let's go to the 6th of February. Was that the first you were aware that there was a problem with Michael?
There were some other text messages between Natalie and I, and then there was a message from Mike as well that I think occurred earlier in the day.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, but I object to any text messages that are not being presented to us and they're not present in court.
Can I respond to that?
References to
Sure.
There's no legal requirement the state's aware of that you have to present text messages. He has firsthand knowledge of it. He can testify about it.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
So this wasn't the first that I knew that. I believe the question was that I knew that something was wrong. Mike was. So this wasn't the first time that morning that I knew that.
So this is an update?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, by 103, You were asked a question. Take a look at that.
Yes.
Had you noticed any odd behavior from him?
I had not. And actually, that's in my response. He hasn't been around. My question was, has he been around anything? Because the earlier messages that she had noted, that Natalie had noted, is that he was sick like last time, because he had been, he was sick in November. He was exposed, or my understanding was he was exposed to black mold while working on a rental home. And so that prompts the question, has he been around anything mold? And then into the supplements.
Did Michael express to you that he was sick because of mold exposure? Did that come from another source?
That initially came from Natalie, because what I was told is they found mold spores in his spinal fluid when they did some type of medical exam in November. And then later, Mike may have said that as well. I don't remember if it come from him directly. More from him was about the story how they were working on the house and 2 contractors were there. They had masks. He did not.
At the bottom of this text references Mexican supplements. Tell us what you know about Mexican supplements and Michael Cochran.
Unfortunately, I can't see the bottom of the text. I'm sorry. Okay. So this is the first time I've ever heard about Mexican. I'd never heard Mike talk anything about supplements from Mexico or anywhere else.
So the sole source of that information is the defendant.
That's correct. Excuse me.
Take a look at this one from about 1:15.
I apologize. On my screen, the first thing I see is
Whoa.
118. I'm so sorry.
Or 18. Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And we'll just...
I'm sorry, yes.
Did Michael advise you of what kind of supplements he was taking?
No, Mike, when Mike would talk about his supplements with me, it was always his GNC, what he would take for his workout supplements. I mean, he never went into any detail about the specificity of the supplements. Probably the most specificity we got into it was he would talk about how Natalie prepared the supplements that he was taking and would then, in essence, manage those according to him.
There's also a reference to seizure medications. What's that about?
My understanding is from November, because of the exposure to black mold while he was at CAMC, there was a determination that he was now having seizures. And so he was prescribed seizure medication, and that's the reference.
November to February, do you know, did he talk to you about taking his seizure medication?
He talked to me about his, yes, he talked about the seizure medicine to the extent he was working on his pilot's license, and that was something he really wanted to get. It was also something that he wanted to do in the future. And we talk about the seizure medicine, how he said, well, I'm not going to be able to fly. I'm not going to be able to do this. We would actually have a lot of dialogue about that because I'd encourage him. Obviously, I'm a pilot, and that was something that we were going to do together, and he'd enjoy. And I would remind him and tell him, no, you'll still be able to fly. You may have a medical restriction or something like that, but you'd be able to fly. So we did discuss these seizure meds.
The last message I want you to review is this.
Yes.
There's a couple things that came to your attention in this, one of which is the defendant reported to you that about his condition at the time.
That's correct.
And then she informs you that he wet himself.
Prosecutor is leading.
That's fine.
All right, perhaps you could read.
Your Honor, we're good with that. Mr. Davis, did there come a time on February the 6th of 19 when you went to the Cochran house?
Yes.
How did that come to pass?
I was at my son's basketball game at Beckley Stratton and got a text from Natalie saying, asking me could I come by the house after the game. Through that dialogue, I'm not sure if I asked the question first or it was volunteer first, but there was another family friend that was at the home at that time, Thomas Treadway, and she indicated Thomas thinks he's getting worse. Could you come by? Because we had been, my wife and I, we'd been texting through the day, like checking on how's he doing, what's going on. We're told vitals are good, people are here, he's fine, all these different things. And then I got that text, I don't remember the exact time, but I'm going to say probably around 6:30-ish or something like that, and asked me to come to the house after the game.
What did you do in response to that request?
Well, I said I could come immediately, and I ultimately went to the home.
When you arrived, what did you see?
So when I pulled in the driveway, there were multiple cars in there. Walk into the home, go into the house. It's fairly quiet. My impressions from that is because Mike's laying on the couch, sleeping, but he's laying there and he's snoring. And so when I get there, of course, Natalie's there. Thomas Treadway's there, her sister Penny Carrico Lowry's there. Penny's husband is there as well. It seems like to me that maybe someone else. I thought that maybe their daughter Nikki was there. I just can't remember. But we're in the living room, they have a big, large living room. We walk in and they're just people are standing there. And he's on the couch.
What did you think should take place at that point?
Well, my first question was, my text message says he's getting worse, and I want to know what does that mean? What's he worse? So I asked. It was kind of everybody was whispering. Because he's laying there and it's like, hey, what's going on? And how's he worse? Well, he's just not responding. Okay. And so I go over to him.
Take a moment. You're okay.
Difficult now because I know the outcome.
When you went to him, what did you do?
So I go over to him and I'm like, hey man, you need to wake up. Kind of shove him, wiggle him a little bit. We were told that Natalie had told us, because that's who it specifically came from, that he had fallen and hit his head earlier. So I'm actually looking for, like, do I see anything? And we've been told about this seizure that he supposedly had, and I don't know what happens when you have a seizure, the outcome, or so I'm just looking. So I'm trying to kind of nudge him, wake him up, shake him. Hey man, you need to get up. You need to get up. Hey buddy, you got to talk to me. And he's just laying there, and it's he's non-responsive. He's just laying there. So at that point in time, I was just kind of looking at his face. I was worried about his head, and I asked, does he have a knot on his head? Is there anything on his head? Because he's laying on his back, so he's laying on his head. So I asked, is there a knot? Is there anything back there on his head? And I believe the responses were no. I'm looking like in his nose and like his ear to see if I maybe see blood or anything. Mike didn't like anybody to touch his face, and not that I'd have any time to touch his face, but I knew he didn't like people touching his face. And my understanding was that when he was younger, there was a fire and whatever the case. But so I tell him, and I'm like, hey man, I'm going to touch your head. If don't hit me, because his arm. I'm like, don't hit me, and it was almost like not. I think we may have, almost like kind of smiled and laughed, like, hey, because it's Mike. And I'm like, hey buddy, don't hit me. I'm going to touch your head. And so I reached down and I looked in his eyes. I'm not really for sure what I was even looking for. To be honest, I was really looking for like maybe trauma, blood, or something. And his eyes, they were fine. They weren't rolled back or anything like that. But anyway, and so after that, Thomas is standing there too, and Thomas does a sternum rub on him, where he took his knuckle, rubbed his sternum, and I just remember saying, man, hey buddy, I'm gonna take you to the hospital. I'm gonna take you to the hospital. So you gotta help me here. Are you okay? What's going on? Are y'all, And so no response. At that point in time, I went down to his feet. My father had a massive stroke years ago, and I just remember the doctors told us then.
Judge, the witness is rambling about statements by doctors, about fathers. I object to that.
I'm going to overrule the objection. You can continue, Mr. Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. So ultimately, I go to his feet and like rub the bottom of his feet, because my understanding, if you were to do that, how the feet respond, the toes respond, can indicate something, a brain injury or a head or something like that. And I remember that because of what my dad went through. So I did that on both of his feet, and it was clear that something was wrong. And I was like, he's got to go to the hospital, and he's got to go now.
Did you enforce that command?
He was going to the hospital, and so I don't want to say I enforced that on anyone, but I remember a question is, you really think he should go? Yes, he needs to go, and he's going to go now, and I'm going to take him, and that's exactly what I did.
Had you ever taken him to the hospital before?
I had. The November incidents that we're referring to, the exposure to black mold, he went to the hospital. It was close, like maybe like a Wednesday, Friday. I can't remember, real close in time. And those two times he was sick. He, again, wasn't feeling well and throwing up. And I went to his house, and you could tell obviously he wasn't feeling good. He was struggling, and he said he wanted to go. He said, take me. He said, I want to go to the hospital. Take me to the hospital.
And that was in November of 18?
Yes.
Was there another time you took him to?
Those were close. They were twice in the same incident. He went to CAMC at first, and then came home for a few days, and then was still sick, not feeling well, and then went back to CAMC.
Can I have just a moment, please? Can I have a moment? February the 6th of 2019. Had you been at the Cochran house?
Yes. On my way to work, my wife had me drop off a flu care package is what I thought it was, because we were told that Natalie was sick and not feeling well, and I don't remember the time, but I went. I wasn't in the Cochran home. I went to their house. At the front of their house, they had these doors that were almost kind of they were glass doors. They looked like they both opened. I don't know if they both opened or not. I think one of them maybe opened. And so I opened the door, put the bag there, and left. I didn't see anybody, or wasn't in the home until later.
So the first time you were at the Cochran house, you stayed outside. The second time was when you went inside, and that ended up with a trip to the hospital.
That's correct.
Did you look in the bag that you dropped off?
I did not.
Where'd you get the bag?
My wife.
That's all the questions the state has. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Davis, you testified on direct that on February 5th of 2019, Michael was a normal Michael, right? No problems, no nothing.
I don't remember any problems he was having on the 5th.
Do you remember Michael on October 30th of 2018?
Not specifically to that day.
Okay. Would there be something that would alert you to Michael being ill, or Michael being sick, or not himself, or anything like that?
I don't remember that specific day. Are you referencing, is that when he went to the hospital in what I believe to be the 1st of November?
The day before he went to the hospital in October of 2018.
No, I don't recall the day before without any type of something to refresh that.
Nothing, however, would indicate that he was so sick that he would have to go to the hospital on October 30th, right?
Not that I recall.
And yet on October 31st, he was in a hospital with some pretty serious conditions, wasn't he?
I don't recall the specific dates you're giving, so that's why I can't answer your question. But if this is in reference to when he was hospitalized at CAMC,
Okay.
then you would be correct. He was hospitalized for several days for the black mold and the seizure.
Hold on, Mr. Davis. He went to the hospital on October 1st, on October 31st, and you don't recall anything as far as October 30th, whether he was in sad shape, whether he was in good shape, or anything of the nature.
I don't. I just
Okay.
remember
You
the day
don't.
he was sick. He was
The answer
sick and
is you
throwing
don't.
up.
Is that right? Yes or no?
Repeat the question, please.
The question is, you don't recall whether he was good, bad, indifferent, or whether he felt bad, or anything of that kind. Yes or no?
The day before he went to the
Right.
hospital?
That's right.
I don't recall the day before he went to the hospital.
But then he went back to the hospital on November the 2nd. Do you remember how he behaved on November 1st?
Yes, he was. He wasn't feeling well. He was sick. the days between when he went to CAMC the first time
He was sick that day?
and he came home, and he was home and sick for the next 2 days, whatever that day is in those, and then
And that's why he
went
went
back
to the hospital.
hospital the second time, correct?
Okay. And you said that on, I guess, February 5th, he did not appear to be in any distress or anything of that kind.
I think what I said is I don't recall
Okay.
he was in distress on the 5th. I don't remember the 5th unless there's a specific event or place or time. I don't remember the 5th.
Do you remember talking to Lieutenant Bledsoe, who interviewed you in this case, on or about, March 22nd, 2019?
I do.
Is it true that you told Lieutenant Bledsoe that in February of 2019 you observed Michael Cochran to mentally struggle while he was assisting you in installing a ceiling fan? Remember that?
I don't remember the statement specifically, but I do remember the event. We were putting a ceiling fan up in my house, and he would do the wiring.
I asked you, Mr. Davis, please listen. I asked you whether do you remember that conversation with Lieutenant Bledsoe?
I don't remember the specific conversation with Lieutenant Bledsoe.
Do you remember? Well, all right. Is it true that in February of 2019, Michael Cochran was struggling mentally and was not feeling good?
He was stressed, waiting on his money.
I didn't ask you that.
And
I
so
asked you whether
I don't.
yes or no, sir. Did he act mentally? Did he struggle mentally? Tell me yes or no.
I believe that, again, he was definitely struggling because of his stress.
I didn't
and
ask
what
you
was
why,
going on.
sir.
So I do believe he was
Your
struggling
Honor,
mentally.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Please instruct the witness to answer my question.
I think he did answer it towards the last. So let's move on.
Did he appear sick to you?
No, he didn't appear sick.
Okay. You observed him as having outbursts of stress and anger that wasn't like him. True? That's what you
Yeah.
told the officer, isn't it?
I don't recall what I told the officer and what you're reading from, but if I told the officer that, that would probably be true. And because, again, he was very stressed.
Okay. Did you have any knowledge of Michael Cochran taking any type of supplements or any type of steroids or anabolics to further his bodybuilding physique?
Mike took supplements. He did not, to my knowledge, take steroids or anabolics
Okay.
for that purpose.
Okay.
It was generally workout supplements is what he referred to.
He took supplements. And did Michael have a seizure either in October of 2018 or November 2018?
I don't recall. I don't think so. I was never told that.
But on November the 2nd of 2006, he went to the hospital with the conditions eerily similar, if not identical, to the conditions that you saw him in on February the 6th. Would that be a case, sir?
I didn't know Mike in 2006. I don't know
I
any
mean, on
incident.
2006. I'm sorry, sir. In 2018, on November the 2nd, he went to the hospital with the same or extremely similar conditions that you found him in February of 2019.
No, he did not.
No, he did not.
Because in February of 2019, he was unresponsive. In November of 2018, he was talking to me, vomiting, and participating in wanting to go to the hospital. So they were two different.
So if there was testimony that he was sleeping in the hospital, perhaps under some type of anesthesia or some type of medication, that would not be true? Or would that be true?
I don't think I understand your question. When is he sleeping in the hospital that
In
you're referring to?
November of 2018, when he is in the hospital, between November the 2nd and November the 6th, there was a time when he was asleep in the hospital. Do you remember that time? You were there with him, I presume.
I'm sure he was asleep when he was in the hospital. I don't remember any particular time that you're referencing. When he went to the hospital, they treated him, and was he in the hospital and treated at some time and sleeping in the hospital? I think that's probably true.
Now, was he sleeping in some form of induced coma, or was he in some type of under some type of medication? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I know that he goes to the hospital, they admit him, and they're treating him, and he is in the hospital.
And then they tell you, because you told the police officer, that Michael, well, let's start with that. Michael is combative, right? Michael doesn't want to be in a hospital.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be in the hospital. What, are we referencing November?
Did he want to be in a hospital in November of 2018?
He asked me to take him to the hospital. While he was in the hospital, did he want to leave the hospital? Yes.
Did he claim that he would never go back to the hospital to you?
Over the 10 years I knew him, he probably claimed several times he didn't want to go back to the hospital.
Now, you learned that Michael may have had a mass on his brain, didn't you?
That's correct. That's what we were told while we were waiting in the hospital in November.
Okay. And then the diagnosis was somewhat changed to the swelling of the brain, correct?
That's probably correct. I don't remember that specifically. We didn't have interaction with the doctors. We're being told these things. So I just don't remember that specifically.
But you learned that Michael had a whole series of extremely serious medical conditions as he was discharged from the hospital.
No, my understanding is that he had seizures. He was exposed to black mold, and through that they determined he has seizures, and he was placed on medicine. That's the only medical conditions that we were ever told.
All right, let me ask you this. You learned that he had encephalopathy, right? Brain swelling. Did you or did you not?
I don't recall that diagnosis,
You don't recall.
but I would
Okay.
defer to
Do
those
you-
medical
do you-
records.
If you don't
and if they
recall,
say it, then I believe
Mr.
it
Davis,
exists.
Your Honor, Mr. Davis, I asked you a simple question. Do you recall being told that Michael had encephalopathy? Do you or don't you?
I was never told his diagnosis.
Okay. No, any diagnosis?
Other than he had seizures and was exposed to
Okay.
black mold.
Okay. Were you told that he had seizure-like activities? Were you or not?
I was told he had seizures. I wasn't told in your
Yes
word.
or no,
he had-
sir?
I'm answering your question. You
Yes
said that
or no?
he has seizure-like
Yes or no, Mr.
activities.
Davis?
And I've
Your
never
Honor,
was told he had
please
seizure-like
instruct the
activities.
witness to answer my question.
Mr. Victor, pose the question, please.
Did you learn that he had seizure-like activity prior to going to the hospital, Mr. Davis? Yes or no?
Going to the hospital in November?
Yes.
No.
No. All right. Did you learn that he had conditions such as urinary retention, chronic sinusitis, confusion, brain swelling? Did you learn about these conditions?
No.
No. Okay. So if you told Lieutenant Bledsoe otherwise, that would not be true, right?
Again, I would defer to the medical records. If those medical records said that, and at some point in time I recalled that through the medical record and repeated that, then it would be accurate. I'm saying today I don't recall hearing those specific diagnoses.
Did you know that Mr. Cochran was prescribed medication for encephalopathy by Dr. Ward? Did you know that or not?
Is that seizure medicine?
Did you know? Well, did you know that he was prescribed the medication for brain swelling by Dr. Ward? Did you or not?
I don't know if I know. He was prescribed seizure medicine. I don't know if that's what that is, Mr. Vicker. If it is, then yes, I knew it. If it's not seizure medicine, then no, I did not know.
Okay. Did you know whether he religiously took that medication as prescribed by the doctor? Did you? Or did you not?
We were told by Natalie that he stopped taking
No,
the
I
medicine.
didn't ask you about Natalie. Did you know from Mr. Cochran or from anybody else but Natalie that he was taking that medication as ordered by the doctor?
Yes, he indicated to me he was taking his seizure medication in December.
Okay. How about January?
He never specifically told me he was taking it or he was not taking it, and that our conversations were more about flying as it related to the seizure medicine.
Prior to February the 6th, you were advised that Natalie Cochran had a flu and she was sick. Yes or no?
On February, yes, prior to February 6th, she was sick
All right.
with flu-like symptoms.
Flu-like symptoms. And you were also advised that Mr. Cochran was sick that day. Yes or no?
On February 6th,
Right.
yes.
Okay. As you sit here today, you do not know what caused Mr. Cochran's condition on February the 6th. You have no personal knowledge of that.
I have no personal knowledge.
Now, did you know that he was taking a whole slew of medications, other such as, for example, Keppra? Do you know what Keppra is?
I have no clue, and I knew no medicine that he was taking other than when he would reference seizure medicine. Outside of that, I didn't know of any other medicine he was
Okay.
taking.
Did you know that he was diagnosed with an acute respiratory failure, sir, when he was in the hospital?
I think we were told by Natalie he had that.
How about convulsive status epilepticus, epilepsy, perhaps? Did you know that?
I don't recall ever hearing that from anyone.
So if those were the diagnoses from the hospital in February of 2019, you wouldn't have any reason to debate the knowledge of the medical experts.
You're correct. I don't know what the diagnosis was.
Okay. Now, and I'm very sorry to hear that, but your son, I understand, was afflicted with diabetes 1, right?
That's correct.
Is he an adult now, sir? I mean,
He thinks he is.
okay.
He's 19, and yes, he's as much of an adult, I guess, he can be.
Okay. And you had in your possession always some form of medication, such as insulin, that would.
No, we don't always have that in our possession. No, he wears an insulin pump.
Right.
And it houses the insulin.
Okay.
But yes, do we always have insulin, say, for instance, at our home? Yes.
Okay.
If we traveled a long distance, we would have it with us. That's correct. He's in college, so he has it with him.
All right.
So, yes.
Okay, sure. Were you ever tasked, sir, with injecting your son with the Humalog insulin so as to maintain his life and his
Yes.
regular condition?
Yes.
How much of that Humalog would you inject, sir?
It was situation specific. So what would happen is you would only inject the insulin necessary to combat the carbs to which he was ingesting.
Right.
So you may inject 1 unit. My wife was much better at this, but if he ate 20 carbs, the ratio may be 1 to 20. So it depends on what he ate, how much you inject.
And we're talking about a little vial or less than a vial.
For a 1 injection.
Right.
Oh, it could be, if he, like I said, if he ate crackers, you may only give him 3 units. And 3 units would be, I'm holding my hand up because I'm envisioning the needle.
Right.
3 units would be small.
How about did he ever need more than 3 units?
Oh, absolutely.
And
Again, that's
how much-
situational specific.
Well, all right. Situation. What was the largest amount of Humalog that you ever injected, you or your wife ever injected into your son's body? Well, show us. This much, that much.
I couldn't answer that because
10 units, 12 units.
I think those are possible. You got to remember when you're injecting him with insulin and he was dependent upon using needles, he would get anywhere from 5 to 6 to 10 injections a day.
Right.
So if you take that and multiply that by a year and a half or 2 years or whatever it is, I couldn't tell you the max we ever gave him. Nor can I tell you the minimum we ever gave him.
Tell me what a unit is, just for.
It is.
Is it in milligrams? Is it in nanograms? Is it in decagrams? What is it?
I have no clue.
Okay.
It's a little line on a needle.
Okay.
And so I have no clue how it's rated.
And how did that Humalog react after about 15 minutes? After about 20 minutes?
It would. I don't know the reaction time. I know that what we tried to do was to determine what insulin he was going to need and try to give him a shot 15 to 20 minutes before he would eat.
Right.
Because it was the fast acting insulin. And so, I really don't know the specifics of how it metabolizes or what it does. I can tell you that in our son now, even with the pump, that he can eat 100 carbs, his 2 Big Macs, and his blood sugar will go up, and as it's reacting to the insulin, it'll then level itself out, come down. It could be hours.
He never dropped on the floor or dropped unconscious after you injected him with a Humalog, did he?
Oh, praise the Lord, no, he did not, because it was administered to him correctly.
Right. I note, like with the other gentleman who testified here earlier, that you were in phenomenal physical shape. You
Flattery
must
gets
be-
you nowhere, Mr. Victor.
you must be working out, Mr. Davis.
I don't work out, but I appreciate the compliment.
Have you ever worked out with Michael Cochran?
No,
No.
no.
You've never participated in any, sports events that would require pumping iron or.
No, we never pumped iron together.
Okay. But you know that Michael Cochran was a bodybuilder. Did you know that?
He was in great physical shape and took care of his body. I didn't know him to ever participate in bodybuilding.
Okay.
So to say he's a bodybuilder, but Mike was in great shape.
But he participated in the Toughman contest.
Yes, he did, and won.
And winning.
Yes.
He also participated in what is it, track pulling competitions or something like that, where great physical strength was required.
Oh yeah, he would participate in those things. I don't remember him ever doing a truck pull, but I know he would participate in those type of I think of like a Spartan event, like Spartan events.
What year would he participate in those? Like 2018, 2019, 2017?
I don't remember the years.
Would it be at the time when his heart was about to burst because he had a mass on his heart, or mass on his, when his brain was about to burst because he had a mass on his brain, or he has brain swollen?
I don't remember what year he participated in those events. If he had that medical condition at some time in the past, I'm unaware of that.
Did he ever tell you that he had any heart condition?
No, he did not.
Did you ever know about his heart condition?
Not that I recall.
Have you ever seen him in a seizure type of a situation?
I've never seen him in a seizure.
Okay. When you went to Ms. Cochran's house on November the 6th, sir, who was there? Who was present?
Thomas Treadway.
Wait, excuse me just a minute. Is this November the 6th? That's
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did I say November?
I thought he said. I thought you meant February. I apologize.
Strike that. Apologize to the jury. February the 6th.
Sure.
Who was present in the Cochran's home, sir?
I remember Thomas Treadway, Natalie, Mike, Penny, and then Penny's husband, Mario.
Several people, right? So,
Yes, and now I think Mario may have been outside when I first got there.
Sure.
But at one point in time, he's in the home in the living room. So those are the people there, and it seems like there was someone else, but it.
how about the children?
I thought, but I may not. I don't remember. I don't specifically remember seeing Ashton or Nikki directly, but it seemed like I thought I may have saw Nikki, but I don't remember.
Natalie wasn't there alone with Mr. Cochran.
No, those people were there with
several
her.
people. So it didn't look to you like somebody was trying to hide the medical condition of Mr. Cochran or conceal it from other people.
At that point in time, I didn't think anything different other than he was not feeling well and doing worse and was there.
All right. Did you see any syringes when you were there?
I don't recall seeing any syringes.
Did you see any vials of insulin when you were there?
I don't recall seeing insulin.
Okay. Was there a time when you and Mr. Hamilton or Ms. Hamilton have to hold Michael down when he started moving
On February
on
the
February
6th?
the 6th?
No.
Was he ever...
He was unresponsive the
was
whole time I
unresponsive.
saw him on February 6th.
Okay. And in November, you had to do that. In November, when he was in the hospital, in November, you had to do that, right?
There was a time in the November events that, yes, when he was in the hospital, he was in the bed, and it wasn't just me and Mr. Hamilton. I think Jonathan Bowen was there. Jason Bowen was there at that time. He was one of their contractors. And he was in the bed, and I remember we were, in essence, holding him down to try to say, look, you have to stay in the bed.
Did you, I presume you, in that friendship that lasted, some nine years or so, you had more than enough opportunities to eat meals with Ms. Cochran, Mr. Cochran, have dinners, lunches, and whatnot. Was he ever, did you ever observe for him to use any medication with his meals? Supplements? Steroids? Anything of that kind?
Well, I can answer the last part of your question. I never saw him use a steroid or anything like that. Did he ever take supplements while we had meals over the last 9 years? I'm sure that after a meal or during a meal, I probably saw Mike take medicine, whatever that would be for a headache or whatever. We had a lot of meals together. And so I just don't recall. But it's possible that I did see him take something after a meal.
Did you ever notice that Mr. Cochran had his own place where he kept his own medication in the Cochran's home?
No, I don't recall ever seeing where he kept his medication.
Did you ever have Natalie Cochran keep the insulin for your son at her home?
No, there'd be no reason for her to keep my son's insulin.
I understand that she was allowed to pick up her insulin for your son because your wife, and I presume you, trusted her so much with the insulin that she could give to your son.
Well, she never gave, to my knowledge, insulin to my son.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not she could pick up the medicine, that my wife would know that more than I would know that. I don't know. If there's an authorization that says she's allowed to pick it up, then that'd be true.
Okay.
But she never gave, I don't recall any time where Natalie ever gave Gavin insulin.
What was the, and again, I'm not going to say absolutely anything negative about your son or anything like that. I'm just going to ask you whether your son and your family had a plan for the treatment of the diabetes if you and your wife were not capable or not able to give him the medication that he needed.
Well, the plan was that one of us would always do that. So there was no plan outside of my wife and I.
So there was never any indication that Natalie Cochran would be allowed to do anything with the insulin and your son.
I don't think I quite understand your question.
I mean, if you and your wife could not give your son the medicine, insulin, that
Correct.
he obviously would need, was Natalie Cochran ever entitled or ever given the right by you to treat him with insulin?
No, I never asked her to treat him with insulin.
Okay. All right. That bag that you left at the door of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran, that you didn't look inside, do you know if she ever found that bag, or whether she ever looked inside, or whether she ever used the contents of it?
Is she, are we referring to Natalie?
Well, yeah, Ms. Cochran.
Okay.
Do you know?
I know
First
the bag,
hand. First hand.
the bag was not there where I left it earlier in the day when I returned. What happened to the bag, I have no idea.
Okay. All right. If I may have a second. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well, redirect Mr. Truman.
Defense counsel asked you if, or implied that because there were so many people, that there was no attempt to hide Michael Cochran's condition. You recall that question?
I do.
Not only did she not try to hide it, she sent this picture to a whole bunch of people, including Jennifer Davis, correct?
Correct.
You know, the state moves to state 6, which I cleverly forgot to do.
Any objection?
I'm sorry.
It's number 6. State's number 6.
No, Your Honor.
It is admitted.
It's all the questions the state has, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Bixby?